Hello, and welcome back to the Film Tits podcast. I am your host, Gwen. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Ivy. Say hi, Ivy.
Hello.
And Wren. Say hi, Wren.
This is really awkward. Can we talk about some film breasts already?
Okay.
We don't need to do the introduction every time. They know who we are now.
We didn't do it last time.
Did we not do it last time?
No, we didn't call the podcast by name last time because we didn't have a name when we went into the recording.
That's true.
Yeah, we didn't. Yeah,
That's a good point.
Film Tits, the bird, not the breast.
Yeah,
I mean, a bit
precisely.
of both.
Could be both.
Could be both. Interesting news today. As of recording, I realise this may be coming out on a later date, but as of recording, it is Colin Farrell's birthday today.
Big up my mans. Big up my mans.
Yeah.
Oh, I love Colin Farrell.
I know Ren is a big fan of Colin Farrell. Ivy, how do you feel about Colin Farrell?
Which one is Colin Farrell again?
Jesus.
Shame. Point and laugh.
I'm trying to think of which movie, because he's in so many.
He's the Penguin in the Batman. He is in Banshees of Inisherin.
Oh,
he is
you mean
in every Martin
Deadshot
McDonagh
from
film.
my favourite movie, Daredevil 2003.
Yes, Bullseye.
I'd find that funny if I.
Yeah, not Deadshot, Bullseye.
Yeah, exactly. Deadshot is the
I'm
other
smart.
one. You are. So
The vampire from the hit movie Fright Night.
I was going to do a whole thing of what are some of your favourite Colin Farrell performances, but you don't even know who Colin Farrell the fuck is.
Probably the Penguin, now that you mentioned it.
I mean, he is good as the Penguin in the Batman. I think
You kind of gave me an out on that one.
Colin Farrell kind of scares me sometimes, when I see him in things. I'm sure he's a very nice guy in real life, but sometimes I see him and it's you give off a threatening aura.
He's got the eyebrows. He's got the eyebrow game.
Gwen sees Colin Farrell in a moving picture and is like, it's like he's coming out of the screen. He's approaching me.
Every time I see Colin Farrell, it's like the train in one of the first pictures. It's like, no, get it away.
I don't think he's that scary.
No, I don't think he's that scary. I just think that he tends to play quite mean characters. Like seeing him in Banshees of Inisherin was such a weird experience for me because he's such just a nice guy for most of that movie, and like that shot where he's just walking down the street with a big old smile on his face and there's a rainbow in the background and everything. And I was like, who is this person? What have they done with Colin Farrell?
Colin Farrell seems like a sweet guy.
I've never seen him so full of whimsy.
What movie scared you into being scared of Colin Farrell?
I don't want to say scared. I don't know. I just get he plays such mean characters. He has a sinisterness to him.
A lot of the Colin Farrell performances I've seen, he's more like a pathetic little man thing.
I was going to say, me being scared of Bullseye in the hit movie Daredevil 2003.
In Bruges, he's an asshole, but he's quite sympathetic or pitiful. And in, what's the name of the movie? The Killing of a Sacred Deer, the Yorgos Lanthimos one.
Well, that movie
hinges on him being pathetic.
That movie just scares me in general. I still have yet to watch that to this day, simply because that movie freaks me out.
We're going to get to that one.
We will definitely get to that, because I've wanted to see that for a while. That and...
Same.
You're probably going to kill me for saying this, Ren. I consider it in my brain in the same category as we need to talk about Kevin, of movies I want to see.
Yeah.
I see.
Apologies if that's mean.
We need to talk about Kevin as a good movie. Why would that be mean?
Ezra Miller.
Oh, yes. Ezra Miller is, in fact, in We Need to Talk About Kevin.
Ezra Miller does, in fact, still have a career.
Yeah.
Mostly.
That's unfortunate. Mostly. Anyway, though, in other film-related news, Home Alone 2 star Donald Trump has been convicted on 34 counts of hush money and other various crimes.
For some reason, I thought you were going to mention that the house was for sale again when you brought it up. I completely forgot about Trump's existence.
Oh, don't get me started on that. The Home Alone house has been
They ruined it.
Ripped of its joy. It's been violated. The house has been completely violated. if I were the house, I would be very upset. I would probably press charges against.
So wait, the house from the original Home Alone is on sale.
Yeah, it's been mutilated. They mutilated it and put it on sale.
Jesus.
You know the scene where he goes downstairs and he's like in the scary basement?
Mm-hmm.
It is no longer a scary basement. They have white upholstered it. It's all clean brick walls, and then they've excavated part of the wall out to add in a basketball court. A full-size basketball court.
That's kind of hype, actually. Never mind. I've changed my mind.
They renovated the attic space that was meant to be like a creepy place where he hid into just a bedroom.
Doing the Jordan, the Home Alone basement.
In fairness, though, like if at the end of the day, it is a house. If you buy the Home Alone house with the intent to live in it, that's
the thing. It was bought by scalpers, and then it's the modern craze of home economics that people are buying up these houses, and they're ruining them of all their rustic charm. They're taking away what the design and passion of the past in favor of Airbnb profits now. That house is going to get bought and just be on Airbnb.
I'm also meant just the idea of the novelty of, ooh, I'm living in the house from Home Alone only has so much charm, and eventually you're going to be like, I want to put a gaming chair in this room, and all of the Home Aloneness of that room will be immediately sucked out of it the second a gaming chair is placed in there, and some RGB lights.
I understand where you're coming from, but you have to understand there's a lot of movies where if I was in that position, I had enough money to buy the house from a movie I liked, that would become my whole personality. If I could buy the fucking hall, I forget the name of the hall that it was filmed in, but the hall from the start of Batman Begins, like Wayne's house, that would be my whole personality. I would be walking around that doing a fucking shitty Michael Caine impression all day. Master Wayne.
Wayne.
Instead of that, can you settle for the house from Hellraiser?
Oh, very much. Very much.
What about the house that Jack built?
The house that Jack built. I don't think you could live in that.
Without offering spoilers for the two podcast members who have not seen the movie, no, I would not consider living in the house that Jack built.
Can we just briefly touch on that? Specifically, just a thing about the credits for that movie. I haven't seen the movie, but I know the director, Lars von Trier, has put himself in the credits for the idea of the house, and I think that's hysterical. That's so funny.
He's something of an architect himself.
Oh, God. Yeah. I'm sure that all of the Film Tits fans out there who have seen the Lars von Trier film, The House That Jack Built, are going to be fucking raving at this part of the podcast.
The brief mention of it. It's going to show up again in 10 episodes. It's
Lars von Trier fans are just going to be swarming the comments, just ravenous at the mention.
Yeah, I think Lars von Trier fans are watching this. I absolutely think they're watching this.
I can't wait for Death Stranding 3 when they put Lars von Trier in.
I think Lars von... I feel like Lars von Trier fans because I feel like the defining thing about Lars von Trier is that he hates himself as much as he loves himself, and I get the feeling that do Lars von Trier fans also go back and forth his movies fucking suck, we love that guy.
I've seen a couple reviews about The House That Jack Built from Lars von Trier fans, and yeah, I'd say you're right.
I don't want this to sound like I understand the intention of what this could, or the way you could take this as intention, but I do mean this in a /pause younger version of him way. Lars von Trier is the movie version of Kanye West.
That's an analogy. That's certainly an analogy.
I'm gonna let you ponder that statement.
Very important that you specify the younger version of him. Not
I mean pre 2017.
Pre 2017. Okay. I personally would go back a little further.
No, honestly, I might even go forward a bit further because what's the name of the
we're entering some
album?
Dangerous territory here.
The name of the album with the green text on mountains just after Kids See Ghosts.
Yeah.
Because I could see him doing. I could see Lars von Trier making a movie that is essentially the opening track of that album.
Okay, fair.
He would start a movie with a monologue where he's just like, "Today I thought about killing you. I contemplated." That would be a Lars von Trier opening monologue.
The Lars von Trier fans and the Kanye West fans are going to be converging in our comment section, and it's going to be we will have hell to pay.
The Kanye fans have been coming for me for a long time. Nothing has changed.
So, shall we talk about Monkey Man?
I don't think I wanna. I'm still thinking about the Home Alone thing, real quick, just to go back to that before we go to Monkey Man.
Okay.
I think we need to change. I know we just came up with the name for the podcast, but I think we need to change it from the film Breasts to the New Build Hate Breasts, because it's just reminded me that I hate new builds, and I have to talk about that now. Do you know what a new build is?
I'm not familiar, no.
So a new build is when they take an older house and they modernize it. It's a thing in Britain right now, especially.
Okay.
And if you've ever seen, like, front yard lawns or front yard gardens turned into, like, concrete driveways, and the houses having, like, going from brick to, like, plain white, like, that's a new build. That's what a new build is. And that's what's happened to the Home Alone house, basically. It's just a new build now.
So to bring this back into film terms, it's like the architectural equivalent of the Star Wars special editions.
I guess you could say that. I was thinking like the live action Lion King, which is still basically
I would
animated.
go further. It's more like the American remake of Old Boy.
Oh
The drapes are there, but there's nothing else behind the wall.
Ivy. You're killing him. You're killing him over here.
Last Train to New York. Last Train to New York.
That's real.
Oh god, that movie's still coming out.
Yep.
Oh,
I'll be there, front row seated. I am there. Haven't
We
seen
will
the
be
actual
seated.
movie. I'll be sat there for
We will get you to
Last
watch
Train
that.
to New York.
Catch the latest Film Tits podcast episode where instead of talking about what's new, fucking Mad Max Furiosa, we'll be talking about the animated movie Epic.
Oh no! Don't get me started. We're talking about Monkey Man today. I'm already gonna go hater mode, but if we have to talk about Epic, I'm gonna go like double hater mode.
Okay.
I'm gonna reach the hater apex. We'll get back to Epic.
Before we start on Monkey Man, I'm going to give a brief synopsis. So Monkey Man is a 2024 film directed by Dev Patel and also starring Dev Patel. The story follows a young man named Kid, who we see at the beginning is earning a living by fighting in an underground kind of illegal gambling arena. He clearly has a lot of trauma. He clearly has some mysterious past to him. When one night he manages to, I suppose, infiltrate or work his way into a sort of very upper-class establishment in which somebody who committed a terrible act against him works, and he starts out a plot for revenge that takes him to many places, both spiritually and politically. Let's say that without spoiling it. Although we will be definitely getting into spoilers for Monkey Man. Let's start off with Ivy. What do you think of Monkey Man when you first saw it?
Good. Movie good.
movie good.
It's a weird one because on the one hand, I would say that as of writing this, or as of reading this, or as of recording this, whichever of those you like,
Scribing
this, it is currently the best movie I've seen this year.
Yeah, I would agree.
Really vibed with it. However, I think that it is likely going to be supplanted because I do have some fairly large issues with it. But as a first outing of a director and showing again what Dev Patel can do when acting, oh lord,
I have issues with it also, and we'll get into that later. But I think like to summarize my thoughts widely, it feels like this film was like chemically engineered in like a lab to have things that appeal to me specifically. Like the action choreography is genuinely really fantastic. Like all of the fight scenes I thought were really good. The story I thought was very compelling, like from many different standpoints, and the music, just the acting, all of it, just really fucking exceptional, especially for a first time director. Now we circle around to Wren.
I literally just finished snacking on my banana. I had a banana for the Monkey Man discussion.
Oh, you're getting really into the monkey mode.
I guess I'll just make my opinions quite clear and simple before we go into it. I think you two should start by talking about the positives, and then I'll introduce my opinion a bit more. We're going hater mode today. I wasn't a fan of this, like, at all.
Yeah.
How do I put it? I do think for a directorial debut, I don't know how you say that. I think it's very impressive. I think Dev Patel did a real good job with it, but I cannot shake the fact I don't like it. That's, I think, the cleanest and least hater way I can explain how I feel about it. We'll get further and deeper into that, I think. I'll let you two talk about kind of what makes it work, and I'll see if I'm swayed a little bit, and then we can interject with my stance on this, because I think we had very, very different stances on just about everything in the movie.
Well, I feel like the action is probably a good place to start off in terms of like what me and Ivy personally liked about it. Like, I think that the action is very interesting in terms of it doesn't feel like most other action films that we've been getting in this era. Like, it doesn't feel clean. It feels nasty and grimy and dirty. Like, there is a kind of shakiness to it, in vein of something like, I don't know, Born Identity, but like it's also like very clear what's happening in every scene.
It feels like, for me at least, it feels like someone finally took the right lesson from stuff like The Raid, where you don't necessarily need to show good choreography. You don't necessarily need to have the best choreographers or the best talented people for it. Not to say that they aren't on the movie, but simply that if you shoot in a way that fits with the tone you're going for and fits the fight style you're going for, you can get away with a lot for a little. That movie has maybe 7 minutes of fight scenes.
Yeah, like the surprisingly, like I feel like you get like sort of 2 sequences of extended action in the film, both of which that last about, I want to say, I think it's a little longer than 7 minutes. I think like the first kind of fight scene starts from when he tries to assassinate the general in the bathroom, and that lasts for about.
I guess this will be your spoiler warning. We will be going into spoilers.
Spoiler warning.
We're terrible at this.
Yeah, that lasts for about 15 minutes, and then we sort of have like plot for a bit, and then like we then have the final fight scene, which goes from like the last, which lasts for I want to say the last 15 minutes.
Yeah, it very much feels, and I imagine this is intentional, so as to mirror the dramatic political themes and messaging of the movie.
Yeah.
That it is a boiling pot. It really it compounds and it compounds and it compounds, and it reaches this apex of violence, and then you get the exacerbated violence, and it carries on for as long as humanly possible, and then it completely cuts out. It gives up. It ends in the equivalent of what would be death. Or like passing out, I guess is a better way to put it, but it feels like the death. It feels like an end of something, and then it begins again with new characters, new discovery, and it picks up and it picks up and it boils and boils and boils, and then we get the final action confrontation. I think that's a, not to toot my own horn, I'm kind of proud of that one. I think that's a good way to describe it.
Yeah, I do think that. Yeah, to go back to what you were saying earlier about like how. Like, I feel like the camera work, like, does a lot in sort of making these fight scenes feel more visceral. Like, there's a scene in the, there's a scene early on where he's, like, escaping from a building. And, like, he's fighting a couple of guys on a staircase, and at one point he grabs a guy's head and slams it into a window, and as the head impacts the window, we go to the other side of the window with the camera, and it, like, it kind of the way that it just forcefully goes through just really sells the impact, and shit like that is just all over. Like, stuff that just really gets you into the fight scene, stuff that like makes you feel like you're there with it. Whereas, like, I feel like with something like John Wick, the tendency is just to sort of like sit back and smoothly pan while the action choreographers do their shit, and that can work definitely. Like, I fucking love the John Wick movies, but like, there's something very nasty about this that I kind of like. I keep using that word.
I went and looked.
Feels
it up,
a bit more desperate.
Really quickly while on mute because I was interested based on this conversation just to like see who the cinematographer was because I never looked it up before.
Yeah.
If you didn't know this may surprise you. It was the cinematographer who worked on Whiplash.
Interesting.
If I'm saying his name right, Sharon Mir.
Nice. I mean that makes sense to me. I feel because the Whiplash.
But he was also the cinematographer on the hit movie Silent Night, starring I cannot remember the name of the actor. I'm going to click through 1 second. Joel Kinnaman, that's the one.
Joel Kinnaman.
Yeah. That was a movie.
I haven't seen Silent Night, so I can't really comment on that.
I watched the first 15 minutes and decided I was going to go watch something else.
I know that Whiplash has a kind of... In terms of that, it has a very sort of intense way of filming things, and I feel like that very much translates over. Not to mention, I know that some of the camera operators in this on the film were actually members of the stunt crew, so that they could actually just get into the nooks and crannies. Like, especially in that scene in the elevator, you have the camera kind of ducking and weaving between fists as they're like flying back and forth. It's very visceral.
It's definitely filmed by and shot by people who know what they're doing.
Oh yeah.
And it feels like it really has something to go for and has something to say.
Yeah.
Like, even in the minute details, even in the soundtrack, even in like specific pieces of it, it feels like it's so purpose built.
Yeah.
I really, really love this movie.
Oh yeah, same. Not to mention also the plot. I feel like going into this movie, kind of all I was expecting and all I was really hoping for was just a good action movie, like in the vein of something like The Raid or something like Mad Max Fury Road or something. Maybe not to that caliber, but like, you know, something like that kind of evoked that same kind of adrenaline pumping feeling in me. And the plot honestly really surprised me in just how well written, how layered it is. Like, the central philosophy of how it handles what is essentially a revenge film is so fascinating to me. In that I feel like 90% of other revenge films, 99% I would say actually, tend to focus on this idea of revenge being a very negative force. It's like, oh, revenge doesn't bring you any peace. Revenge doesn't actually like benefit you in any way. Whereas this film kind of looks at revenge through the context of destruction and rebirth. It's like you must destroy what is corrupted in order to make room for something better to grow. His revenge is not seen as a sort of selfish thing. It's seen as an act of revolution because it allows him to heal. It allows the world around him to heal, and it allows those people who have been affected by the same people who hurt him to grow and make a world that's better for them. I just think that's really interesting, especially when you take into account the religious aspects. Obviously, I'm no expert on Hindu mythology, but the way that interweaves with like the story of Hanuman, I think is really fascinating. I think the inclusion of the Hijra community is rather well done.
Yeah, I was going to add on to what you were saying there in the sense of, like, it doesn't necessarily take... The biggest example in the room is going to be John Wick, obviously, because that's the one that was on everybody's minds because of how people were talking about this movie leading up to it.
Yeah.
But, like, in movies like that, of that caliber, like, revenge is always painted also as a very selfish thing, as a very specific to one person, not of a... It's not something other people can join in on, but this movie really feels community-oriented to a certain degree. There's parts where that fail for me. But
if anything,
generally overall...
That's kind of his arc over the course of the film. It's like he needs to learn that he is not a one-man army. He needs to accept the power of a community that has been disenfranchised like he has, and
it also feels like turning that grief to something that could be useful, to doing something that could actually benefit people after he's gone. I'm
not saying that this film is saying that, like, universally revenge is a good thing, but I think it's saying that, like, revenge when just, like, wild and unwieldy is... like, it is not good. Whereas, like, when he actually sort of focuses his revenge towards actually doing something constructive and
it's
like
a
helping
weirdly
a community.
positive statement. it's a weirdly positive statement towards what I would say is like what's the phrase? How would I phrase this?
It's rather radical, I would say.
Anger management is how I would
Yeah.
phrase it. Like it's showing how like going for something like that, a person who's like untempered, who doesn't know what to do with the anger they feel, the rage they want to use, an outburst, how they can take that, temper it, and turn it into something that can help. And obviously, we still get an explosive conclusion out of it. We still get your Hollywood cinema moments, and it feels very cathartic for that. But it also like it's very practical in a sense because something is achieved.
Yeah, there's a scene sort of midway through the film where he sort of goes on a spiritual journey after sort of being rescued from the brink of death by a group of by a member of the Hijra community. Hijra, for those of you who don't know, are a group of I'll say gender non-conforming people who live in India and who follow certain
for the
religious
purposes
practices.
of legalization, they do consider themselves to be part of the trans community.
Yes.
Just as a reference.
Yes. And I don't want to say trans or non-binary because like it's a separate thing unto itself, but yes, they are very much part of the LGBT community. And I think that there's a line that one of them says after sort of sending him on this spiritual journey. The pain will leave you when it is done teaching you. And that is really fascinating to me in the context of a revenge film. It's like the idea of like, using it to learn, to actually like using the harm that has been done to actually fuel you and to push it towards something that can benefit others other than yourself. Like I think just in general, I think it's a very well done story. And the fact that trans people as a non-binary person myself, the fact that trans people are central in the story as figures of wisdom and teachers and sort of part of an ancient philosophy, something that goes back generations. I think that's something that I've never really seen in an action movie before, or in any movie before. Like,
it really is fascinating how it weaves it in. Like it doesn't just stop at the idea of community. It weaves it into a current political climate, a current conversation, a current movement of trying to get people the rights that they deserve and get them seen and heard.
Exactly.
And it feels really, it feels like a moment. And
I think
that's quite nice.
I think it is important to mention that the leader of the Hijras in the movie is a character named Alpha, and Alpha is, as far as I'm aware, played by a cisgender man. I understand that Hijra and sort of, I guess, what the Western understanding of what a binary trans person is are different, and like it encompasses a lot more than just, again, binary trans or non-binary. It's like a whole thing unto itself. But at the same time, like, I think it is worth mentioning, and you can come to your own conclusions about that. But I know for a fact that many trans and non-binary and gender non-conforming people were hired for this film. So there is that.
It's an interesting point because that feels like one of the sticking points for me. That feels like one of the bigger, like, outside of narrative issues and just presentation issues, and definitely money issues, which I'm imagining we'll get into. It feels like one of the few proper things I take issue with, and funnily enough, it's one of the few things in this movie Dev Patel didn't have input in. According to every resource I can find online, he at no point had input on casting decisions outside of himself.
I see.
So I'm wondering if he even knew while the production was going on, and if by time it like came to film the scenes it was too late, or if it was a case of, oh, the person is hired now, is this okay? Because they had ambassadors on to look at the movie, and everybody was fine with it. So I really do wonder how that conversation went.
I don't want to give it too much shit for it, because obviously there are plenty of trans people who were trans, LGBT, Hijra people who were involved in the creation of this film, and it's clear that I would say that it is leaps and bounds above a lot of trans representation that we've been getting lately, in that it is just doing something that is so fresh and new, at least from what I've seen. But it is still something worth mentioning, I would say.
I would certainly say it doesn't sour my enjoyment of it.
No,
Like
far
I
from
say
that,
I
I'd say.
have these little issues and problems with the movie here and there, and like this is one of them. But it doesn't necessarily. If I remember right, I either gave the movie a 4.5 or a 5 stars. I might have given it a 5 stars on my
I
rewatch.
gave it a 5.
Um,
Yeah.
I definitely do think it is. It's an exceptional movie, and by God, I'm glad it wasn't condemned to the Netflix pits.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If this film came out on Netflix, I would have been so upset. Now that we've sort of talked positively about it for a while, Ren, do you want to get into some of the stuff that you took issue with, some of the stuff that held you back from...
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I remain unconvinced.
The
so we'll
hater
talk
is
about it now.
unleashed. Okay.
The hater is coming out. So I get what you're saying about this arc of revenge. I don't think that's shown in the action. I don't think that interweaves at all. Whether he fights in a community or not, he's never shown fighting alongside this group of people. He's always fighting alone, even towards the end. All of his fights are either him against a bunch of people or him against one person. There's never any real showcase of teamwork there. So those two sides of a narrative don't interweave at all.
Interesting.
I think that's the first thing I'm going to go through. I have a whole list of things. I did not like this movie. You guys gave it, I think, 5 stars across the board. I gave it a 2.5. So
I would want to interject there. I think that he does grow over the course of the film in terms of like how that's shown in the fighting. Like I noticed that like the first couple of fight scenes are shot in a very shaky and kind of haphazard way. And you can still very much tell what's going on, but like it feels shaky, it feels like rough, it feels very messy. And as the film goes on into the second sort of set of fight scenes, the camera work is a lot more clean and a lot more like precise, and like you see a lot more. And I feel like that combined with his like increased expertise at being able to actually handle the combatants shows his growth and shows the effect that sort of learning from that community has had on him. But I get where you're coming from in terms of like the teamwork aspect of it. So
I agree in a sense, but I don't think his arc is entirely derived around teamwork. I think it's mostly coming to peace with trauma and self-understanding,
yeah,
which is shown through, again, the camera work. It's originally quite shaky, and I guess the camera itself feels quite rage-filled, while he keeps his temper quite cool in the later half, in the later action sequence.
Yeah.
Everything's more serene to it. There's more of an art form there to his fighting.
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen that before in a lot of things that do revenge. I don't think this is as subversive as you could argue it being.
I mean, I'm just talking from a perspective as somebody who has... I've seen a lot of revenge fillers, and like I think how that interweaves with the religious aspects and how it's sort of seen from a more positive angle is something that I don't really see a lot in them, but, you know, that's just me.
It's interesting, and I'd like to see more films try in this direction, but the pacing and the action just weren't doing anything for me.
I see.
That's the other thing, the pacing. This movie is, how long? It's 2 hours, and it feels 2 hours.
Yeah.
I felt how long the movie was. And I think that is because of the lack of action. Yeah. It's very, very slow, and I don't think it accomplishes much in that slow time. There's a lot of exploration of trauma, but each different scene where he experiences his trauma, I don't think elaborates on the one that we'd seen previously. It's kind of just a repetition, and you could argue that's the point, but I don't think it's giving me any new information. And while it works artistically, I think in terms of keeping me engaged, I felt like I was running around in circles until he did eventually complete his training and go fight again.
And I don't disagree. I understand that they do kind of do the flashback thing a lot in the first half of the film. So yeah, I do get where you're coming from with that.
There's a lot of stuff I just don't understand as well. Like, I guess the stuff with the dog shows him as compassionate, and I don't know what to expect. I'm not expecting, like, an MCU moment where the dog comes and bites a guy's dick off.
Well, it was to help him get the gun into the place. Like, he was...
It was to do that, yeah, but I also think to a certain extent it was more... it's to more. This is going to sound comical as a person who is already aware of the problems and calculations of capitalism and what that does to a society. And as a person who understands that and already knows how that works, it can seem like a silly idea. But for a person who goes into this movie who is, for lack of a better term, a centrist, they see stuff like that, and it helps build up the idea that this world, while looking like ours, is seedy, and it gives an impression of a darker layer that is there, and it helps people sink into these actions being possible. Despite the fact it is a very much a depiction of the real world, it helps people who aren't ready to see the real world yet accept it.
Yeah. It also helps show him as a compassionate character, somebody who looks out for the underdog, that kind of thing.
It is infinitely easier as a screenwriter and as a person making a film to drive empathy for an animal than it is for a person.
Yeah.
Because a person on screen, as a person who is a big fan of horror movies and thriller movies especially, I see a person as expendable the second they're on screen. But if I see a dog on screen and I know that that dog is going to die, I am very upset. When I see Pet Sematary, I have to emotionally prepare myself for the fact that I'm about to see Pet Sematary. Same with Cujo. Hell, I struggle watching Marley and Me, but I can sit down and watch Terrifier 2 for kicks.
You keep telling me to watch Pet Sematary, and yet you have to mentally prepare yourself for it?
Because there are parts of that with animal violence that get me. I'm not.
Okay, fair enough.
The two things that personally get me are animal violence and bones.
I see.
That's always been my thing. Not just like showing bones, but like human bones snapping.
Yeah, fair enough.
I don't want to get too explicit on it because we're talking about Monkey Man, but
right.
Those are like my two things that actually get me.
Yeah.
I don't watch a jump scare and be like, "That was cool. I loved how that was framed." Doesn't scare me though.
For me, it's teeth stuff. I can't do anything with like teeth getting pulled out or like it hurt or anything like that. I can't do teeth stuff.
But yeah, my point is like when you see him empathizing and helping with the dog, it does a lot to drive character that doesn't have to be said with words. And while I do agree that it definitely could be shorter, I do think a lot of it could be tightened up. I'm not necessarily mad that it does go longer.
Yeah.
If you have those issues in the first place, I can understand how you're like, oh, this needs to be shorter, this needs to be tightened up. But as a person who's already having a good time, I'm just like, yeah, this is fine.
I mean, also, I've watched it like 3 times in the time since first watching it, and like, for me at least, the pacing has. This tends to happen when I rewatch films that I like, but like the pacing tends to get better for me on a rewatch simply because it's like, oh, I know what to expect. I know exactly how long it is between scenes, so you know I don't get as antsy waiting for whatever comes next.
I think the only other thing to discuss really is the ending. The movie just kind of ends.
Yes.
And I was really unsatisfied the whole way through. I was just kind of like, that felt really long, but also that's it? Question mark? Like,
I mean, that's understandable. I get that. Like, how you could be disappointed by that ending. It does end rather suddenly. The way I kind of saw it is, like, he has achieved his revenge. Like, there's a repeated message in the film of the idea that he is being kept alive for a purpose. Like, you know, he should have died in the river the first time he got shot and then fell in, and the Hydra saved him. And she says something along the lines of, you know, the gods must have plans for you because you are still here. And so the way I see it, it's kind of like his death, I guess, at the end of the film is him being allowed to have peace. It's him finally... I mean, you can see it as him dying, you can see it as him passing out from, like, exhaustion or anything like that. But, I mean, if they ever decide to do a Monkey Man 2, I will buy the fact that he made it out of there. But...
It's a conclusion of work. It's an acceptance of fate.
It's him being like, I have done what I have set out to do, and now I have peace.
It's to you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna compare it to John Wick again. Fuck it. Why not?
Yeah.
To draw a connection between that
Spoilers
and John Wick.
for John Wick 4.
Yeah, spoilers for John Wick Chapter 4. To draw a comparison between that and John Wick Chapter 4 and explicitly the end of it, it feels like a character accepting that they have done all that they can and have reached the point of the end of their journey. They have accepted the fate they have met. And
Yeah.
I quite like that. Hell,
I
I'm
mean,
going to
you
quote
don't
Tenet
really need
while
to
I'm
show
at it.
much else
It's
other
an
than that,
expression
in
of
my
faith in the mechanics of the universe.
Tenet moment.
We're not doing Tenet.
Turning
So-
half the audience against me immediately by mentioning Tenet.
Yeah, we're
We're
gonna
never gonna do Tenet. It's not happening.
we're gonna
That's
do
the one I will veto.
we're gonna do an episode of the podcast that's about Tenet, and it's just like me and Ivy talking about the movie, and occasionally you just hear Wren tied to a chair, like with some tape over their mouth, like.
You sounded like a thwomp. You sounded like "Urgh!" Like, you sounded like that.
That's kind of real.
Like a thwomp from Mario.
It'd be more. I'd sit there muted and just occasionally come in and say some quirky Tenet one-liner, like
Yeah.
"I'm the protagonist" or "We live in a Twilight world."
You'd probably like Tenet a lot more if you were willing to accept that it is just Old Man Yowie with sci-fi elements.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible.
God, I hate Tenet.
I think one thing that's worth bringing up, and I think a discussion that I kind of wanted to have with you guys in terms of Monkey Man, because I really liked it. Ren, you didn't really care for it that much, and Ivy also really liked it. I suppose it's a thing of like when you give a movie like a, maybe this is just a thing with like numerical scores, like with the rise of things like Letterboxd, you know, like if I give a movie a 5-star, there are times when I'm just like, I give a movie a 5-star because it's like, oh, I think this movie is like perfect. I don't have any flaws with it. I don't have any problems with it. Like, I think it's really good. Like, perfect movie. This isn't one of those cases. I do notice flaws in this film. I do have problems with it. And yet I think I admire it so much for what it is and what it tries to do and how much it feels like it appeals to what I like in films that I don't know. It's hard for me not to give it that. And so I suppose I'm wondering, it's like, I suppose the question that I'm asking is like, how do you give a 5-star to like a film that you don't think is perfect, or is there such a thing as a perfect film? Like, can you give an example of a film that like you recognize has flaws, but like you will like bat for it anyway in that case?
On the one hand, there is no such thing as a perfect movie. On the other hand, Shawshank Redemption is a perfect movie.
Shawshank Redemption.
Untrue. Space Chimps exists. I know that it.
You're
can't be
right.
compared
Space
to
Jam
any
is a
other
perfect movie.
No, Space Chimps. This is the chimp themed episode.
Who framed Roger Rabbit?
No.
I mean, Ren, I'm sure that you have a movie out there that like you've given 5 stars, even though you have a ton of problems with it. Like,
Oh yeah, Dead Poet Society, easy.
like, what is it about that kind of, you know, compels you, despite like?
There's like the weird guy in that movie who wants to get with that one girl, and then there's that weird scene where he kisses her without her like knowing, and it's really strange. And I get what it's trying to do. It's exposing that Robin Williams' character's ideals are fallible when misinterpreted, because he gets quite cross at them when they start using the idea of carpe diem as a kind of crux to do stupid shit. So I get the purpose of it. I just thought it was a tad bit too sus. It was a tad bit too sus.
Yeah.
Me with Titane.
Yeah, I suppose Titane is another one that you could probably
Titane is for the dolls. Like, I don't have to explain it any more than that. Titane is for the dolls. It's for the fucked up dolls. It's for the dolls that still scroll 4chan. It's for the dolls that have fucking Twitter Premium, despite the fact they don't have a subscription.
You're insulting to 10 fans massively.
That's what I'm here to do, baby.
Fuck to 10. You heard it here in the podcast.
We'll
Fuck
have the
to
Titen fans, we'll have the Kanye fans, we'll have the Lars von Trier fans. It's going to be a fucking shit show.
For reference, I'm a fan of all three of those things, and I also gave Titan a 4-star.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I just think it's interesting, the idea of like the fact that I can like what instances where like a movie has like the other day, me and Ivy watched the first Omen, and we really I was really digging that movie. And then the ending happened, and it really detracted from a lot of it. Maybe for you more so than me, Ivy.
The funniest part of it for me was that the entire movie, I was connecting it in my head and I was adding it up and I was like, there's no way this movie could end any other way. This is exactly how it was going to end. I knew it was going to become a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
It's Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness all over again.
Yeah.
It's shot well, it's colored well, it's got fun set pieces, it's got silly stuff going on, it's got good performances for the most part, and then the writing. It's someone just hammered their thumb.
Yeah. I guess the point that I'm trying to make is like, you know, what is it
giving your son a name,
like
Damien?
Like what kind of like. What in some cases, like, you know, because there are certain films where it's like, you know, oh, it will be really good, and then you'll have one thing that will completely ruin it for you, and it suddenly that becomes a bad movie at that point. Whereas, like, with other things, it's like, you know, the rest of the movie is so good, and then there's one minor thing that detracts from it, but you just can't care. Like...
Phantasm.
Yeah, I guess that is a good example. It's like that... those movies are fucking wild, but like, and I have a lot of weird shit, a lot of weird and kind of sus shit happens in those movies, but god damn are they fun.
There's a lot of movies that exist in that space. Frankly, there's a lot of stuff that I'm just, I don't know. These days I consider myself a bit more of a, I'm very go with the flow, and one sus thing or one bad thing can't ruin an experience for me unless it is something vehemently against me as a human being. I'm fine with it. There's only a couple of instances where I've ever been like, this has completely ruined a movie for me.
Yeah.
If I was to pick one, if I was to just to mention one as an example, my easy roast is always going to come back to Eli Roth's The Green Inferno. That movie is an embarrassment to humankind.
Damn.
What was he cooking? The kitchen's on fire.
In terms of like endings that I think of, or like moments in films that I think have genuinely ruined it for me, or at least detracted a lot of enjoyment. There's a scene, I won't spoil what happens because it's kind of messed up to mention on the podcast out of nowhere, but there is a scene in the Park Chan-wook movie Thirst that after it happened, I was like, why was that there? That did not need to be there. If anything, that detracts from the character's arc. Why is that in the movie? And
this is me showing Evil Dead to anybody and being like, oh yeah, you'll love it until that scene happens.
Oh yeah, there's that scene in the Evil Dead movies.
The tree scene, for people in the know. For people not in the know,
Random tree event.
Look up 25 minutes into the Evil Dead 1.
Yeah, we don't acknowledge the tree. We don't acknowledge the weird grabby tree.
Random tree event.
Random tree event.
Tree.
Yeah. I guess it is just kind of interesting how, like, I guess it just comes down to a very personal bias in the end. Like, everybody's going to have their films that, like, you know, a thing is ruined for them because it, like, goes against things that they, you know, hold dear or just...
It goes back to what I was saying earlier about, like, empathy towards human characters versus towards animals. It's empathy towards generic violence versus sexual violence.
Well, I meant less so specifically in terms of that scene into the tree, and more so just, like... I guess it just comes down to personal taste and like what films like, because
I suppose for the examples I was providing, yes. Yeah. For the examples you were providing, the first kind of comes back to that too.
We're all kind of contradictory in a way, I guess, in terms of like, I'm sure we all have movies that like have weird shit in it that we will defend, like, or that we will, you know, still say is good regardless of that. Like, the opening scene of Babylon, I swear everything in there is necessary, I swear. But then, you know, we'll see it in another film and we'll be like, that's shit because of this, even though it's exactly the same in the movie that I like. It's like, I don't know, we're fallible human beings, I guess.
True. Me watching Memories of Murder versus Ren watching Memories of Murder.
Neither of you have seen that.
No, we have. No, wait, I've got the wrong movie. Hang on a second. Which movie am I thinking of? What's the name of it? Fuck.
What, Cure?
No. Okay, come back to me. I'm gonna go find it.
Well, I was thinking that I feel like our discussion on Monkey Man has come to an end. So now, I think it's time. Is it time to move on to the hypothetical?
yeah, I feel like we've accomplished our
Introducing it
little
like a Marvel
discussion
villain.
here. What we've learned is that we're fallible. Accept me. My opinions are correct. Monkey Man is bad. We've accomplished everything that we set out to do.
Can I bring up the dictator discussion that you had the other day?
Yeah,
Dictator?
sure. If you
Like
if
the
you want to get
movie?
me cancelled,
Yeah.
if you want to get me cancelled, you can.
Me and Wren, for those of you listening at home, me and Wren had a discussion the other day where Wren tried to argue that if they were a dictator, they would be a good one
Yeah,
because they're infallible.
I am infallible.
A person who
Monkey
wants
Man
power
fans,
never deserves it. Sorry, Aaron.
Monkey Man fans, if you're listening, I'm right.
Okay,
You're
yeah,
wrong.
Wren, what
I
if you
portrayed
were,
myself
if you
as the
did,
Giga Chad and you as the Soy Jack. I win.
Wren, if you had
I've won the
absolute
argument.
Wren, if you had absolute political power, what would you do to Monkey Man fans?
What would I do to Monkey Man fans? I would
Oh no.
Don't just laugh. Don't just laugh.
dox and kill
sinisterly.
them. Dox and kill them. No, just kidding, Monkey Man fans. Ape strong together. Give me a hug.
I found it. The movie is a record of sweet murder. I knew murder was the last word.
That movie. Yes, that movie.
Yes, Koji Shiraishi.
That
That's a
I
very
pronounce that a
movie
different
to
way every
Memories
time.
of Murder.
that movie is that movie's a lot. I don't think we have time to get into that movie.
I could see the poster image in my head, and I just could not, for the life of me, remember that. That's another one I'm going to bat for. Koji fans, come at me.
That's for the raunchy Patreon episode. Film
boy.
Tits After Dark.
We'll throw a review of Sadako versus Kayako in there.
Hell yeah! I'm sure Ren will
Jesus
love that
Christ.
one.
I'm gonna love it.
Yeah. So anyway, the other day I posed a question to my two beloved co-hosts. I posed a question of, if you were going to show a movie to someone who had like, imagine a person who has never seen a movie before, never in their entire life. They're like, they've lived their whole life and they've never once watched a movie. What movie would you show them?
Pixels, starring Adam Sandler.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Who's starting there?
I mean, Ivy, you had a pretty good suggestion the other day.
Did I? I've completely. I think I said Mission Impossible.
Mission Impossible is a weird one because I feel like there are 8.
One of the later Mission Impossibles, not the first. I'd say not the first 3. I do have a fondness for 3, but not the first 3. But the later ones are so easy to just slip into.
I mean, yeah, but I feel like also there is pre-established context, and I feel like you're gonna have a hard time selling that to somebody who's never watched a movie before.
I don't know. The movies feel like they do a good job of communicating the context, but I have come up with a better version of that since then. It's a movie that's very near dear to my heart, and I think I said it right as you were going to bed, and that would be Spider-Man.
The Sam Raimi Spider-Man.
Yes, I think Spider-Man 1 and by extension Spider-Man 2 are perfect movies.
I see.
I would even go to bat for Spider-Man 3. I'm a big fan of that movie as well.
Fair enough.
I would go on a whole tirade about Spider-Man 3 and in particular the first Sandman scene, but unfortunately Jacob Geller beat me to it.
So what is it about Spider-Man that you think would actually like be a good like first watch for somebody who, like, aside from it just being a perfect movie, as you say?
Okay, one, it's got a simplistic hero's journey, but it does it exceptionally well. The writing is tight. The comedy is good. The action's good. It's well choreographed. It's well shot. It's well paced. All the actors are doing a good job, except for James Franco. Everything about that movie is fantastic. It's sincere. It's funny, and it leaves you with a heartfelt message. It's great. I've watched that movie so many times. I saw that movie when I was 12 years old. I think maybe 13. No, 12 years old. I was 12 years old. And I am now 25 years of age. I have rewatched it at least once a year, every year of my life, and it is still as good as the first day I saw it. It is a perfect movie in my mind. Janky CG and all.
Fair enough. I mean, Ren, did you have any ideas on like what movies you would show to somebody who, because you've been pondering this question?
I've came up with a whole roadmap. I have a plan.
You've done what you like. Okay, you've done like your beginner's guide to cinema.
I've named it and everything. The two of you familiar with the old story of Icarus?
Yes.
Unfortunately, I have played Deus Ex: Human Revolution. Yes.
Yeah.
So we're gonna start off with Home Alone 1990,
Okay.
which I think is fairly standard. If you want to show someone this is what a movie is, this is how it can be enjoyable, you show them Home Alone, and that's... You can introduce them to the concept of an actor, a celebrity. If you want to go the extra mile, you can put on Home Alone 2 Lost in New York to show people that actors can be felons, and also to show them what a sequel is.
I knew you were gonna fucking bring that up. I knew it.
God damn it.
Then it's rewind time, and we go back.
Okay.
We go back to ye old 1954, and we watch Rear Window.
I see.
And we introduce the idea of suspense. We introduce the idea of kind of classic cinema with some auteurism from Hitchcock. One of his best, I'd argue. So you watch that, and they're like, okay, I have a general idea of how we got from Rear Window to Home Alone. I see the trajectory there.
Okay.
And you go, okay, let's go right to the present and watch a movie that is nostalgic of movies like Home Alone. We're going to watch The Holdovers. I know there's 2 Christmas movies in here, but
I see.
I think those are quite universally appealing, at least to people who like Christmas. And I think The Holdovers can work for people who don't as well.
Okay.
So, after all that is said and done, you've introduced your friend to cinema. Your friend now is like, yes, I understand what a movie is. Then you sit them down and you say, I've got one more for you, and here's where Icarus begins.
Okay.
So what you're going to do is you're going to boot up the movie The Eternals and watch their face burn up.
Why?
You are going to wheel them to the top of the hill and shove them off. That is how you do it. And that is a lesson in movies being bad or franchises being confusing.
Of all the ones you could have gone for,
I feel okay. In all seriousness, I feel like Eternals is actually like, if you wanted to get that message across, I feel like Quantum Mania would have been better. I actually kind of liked Eternals because it actually felt like it was doing something different by MCU.
it felt like
standards.
it felt like it was actually a constructed movie.
It felt like it was trying something, whereas like
I'm gonna be so honest with you. I had the list. I had Home Alone, I had Home Alone 2, I had Rear Window and The Holdovers, and then I just had a random Phase 4 MCU movie. Pick it while you're saying it.
That's so
pondering.
funny, considering that I went to bat in this episode already for one of the Phase 4 movies.
yeah.
That being Doctor Strange. I do think the new Doctor Strange has a fair amount of redeeming quality. I would go so far as to say the new Doctor Strange is the best movie they've done since Infinity War.
I think that movie would actually be the best one to show them in this Icarus thing, because the minute you get to all the
That'd
multiverse
confuse them
scenes where
so
the
fucking much.
epic cameo comes up, I think I'm going to like put my friend into a shock state that they will not be able
Okay.
to come out of.
That movie is a good example, I suppose, in the sense of it has good cameo, but it has bad cameo. Because
Yeah.
it has good cameo in the sense of you can put Bruce Campbell in any movie and I'll clap like a seal.
Yeah.
That man, I love him. He's an angel.
Sam
I've seen
Raimi
I've
fan
seen
over here.
the fucky Elvis movie he's in, and I don't care. It's still good because he's in it.
I wouldn't go so far as to say it's good, but like
What's the name of the movie? I can't think of.
Baba Hotep?
Yeah, Bubba Hotep.
Oh, great. We're pissing off Baba Hotep fans now. Oh,
I-
God.
I enjoyed that movie to a certain extent. I think if I had a couple of beers and I was sat with people I liked and they were like, hey, do you want to throw this on? I'd probably be like, let's watch Lair of the White Worm instead. But if they said no, then I'd say, yes, let's do it.
Baba Hotep for me is like what Ren thinks about Monkey Man. Like, it's like everybody's like, yo, this movie's so funny. And I'm like, it's boring as shit.
I think it's going somewhere. And where it's going is into the lake.
Into the lake.
Well, the stream.
I just can't believe the director of Phantasm made something that boring. But yeah,
We still need to watch John Dies at the end at some point.
true. But yeah, in terms of my picks for what movies I would show somebody who hasn't seen a movie yet, I did have a couple of ideas. They're not formatted in as constructed of a timeline as Ren, But I did have a few ideas. One of them I thought was like, okay, let's go for a movie that is based off a book, because I feel like that will, like, that you're transitioning from one sort of very established form of media to another, so, it will be like a good entryway. And for that, I went with The Martian. Good performances. It has a setting that, is outside of our world. It shows that movies can be transportive. But I also thought, like, I thought to myself, like, okay, you're showing a movie to somebody who's never seen a movie before. Chances are they've never seen a movie because they've thought movies aren't interesting. And I thought, like, okay, there's the safe option in terms of, like, what movies, like, I could show them a decent movie and they'll be like, oh yeah, this is good, this is not too overwhelming. But I feel like you also kind of want to give them something to chew on, so it's like, ooh, movies. I should come back for more of these. And so for that, I put 12 Angry Men on my list. Just because I feel like that is a movie that is very simple to understand, it's very contained, it's very straightforward, but it will leave you with a lot to think about afterwards.
While I don't necessarily disagree, I think for a person who has already written off movies, the idea of, like, maybe just from a young age they, like, haven't watched them and they're like, yeah, movies aren't for me, I don't like movies, I think showing them 12 Angry Men wouldn't change that opinion.
Yeah, I get that. It's like the idea of, like, hey, I know you've never seen a movie before, but do you want to watch a film from 1957 directed by a French man?
That's why you introduce Home Alone first, and I'm gonna interject on The Martian, because let's introduce our friend here. This is Grug. He's lived under a rock and he hasn't seen a movie. So you're gonna bring Grug up to the surface and you're gonna sit him down and you're gonna watch a movie with Grug.
Okay.
And you're gonna put on The Martian, and Grug's gonna be about 45 minutes into it and he's gonna turn to you like, friend Gwen.
Yes.
Is this gonna end? This is boring. This is corny. Martian fans, I hate you.
While we were discussing this, I did actually have a recollection.
Sorry, just the idea of this caveman who's just, like, never seen a movie before being like, the pacing is terrible.
I think this line is corny. I would have written it better.
Lack of subtext.
Grug thinks this director should be shot and killed.
The Film Tits podcast does not endorse these statements. We want to be clear, we don't think that Ridley Scott should be shot and killed.
I'm Team Grug.
I don't know, I'm kind of Team Grug on this.
Hey.
Ridley Scott.
We don't think Ridley Scott should be shot and killed. That is the official stance of the Film Tits podcast.
Can we have Ridley Scott on here? I think we can get Ridley Scott on here. Just for a couple
Ridley
words,
Scott, if you're
nothing
listening,
else.
we don't want you shot and killed. Come on the pod.
Come on the pod, please. We'll talk about Napoleon.
Oh my god. Okay.
That was Ridley Scott, right?
If we're getting anyone on the pod, I beg we get Sam Raimi.
Oh, incredible. What was the other thing that you were going to bring up, Ivy? The other...
Yeah, I was going to say, it is the easiest option to select because I have seen it happen in real time. So, I'm trying to remember the name of the streamer, but it was one of those alt-right, people don't really like him streamers. Like, one of those streamers that exists for hate clicks.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks he doesn't have opinions. I might be thinking...
Yeah.
But it might be somebody else.
I'm going to be honest, might bleep his name in the recording. We'll see.
Understandable. Okay, if you're going to bleep it, then I'm also going to say, just for your two's context, the other one I'm thinking of, it might. I don't know.
Also going to bleep that.
Yeah. Yes. But anyway, people will be able to track down the tweet because it still exists. The tweet they mentioned they said that a friend got them to sit down and watch Interstellar. They had never seen a movie before that they liked. They had never watched a movie that, like, clicked with them. They'd always turn them off. They always thought they were a waste of time for nerds, etc., etc. They sat down and watched Interstellar, and they straight up said it made them cry.
I mean, it made me cry, so... Yeah.
And they got so much flack in the comments for mentioning that it made them cry, but, like, so many people were like, I'm glad you found something. You found your soul.
Yeah.
You found something that speaks to you.
Yeah.
And honestly, in that moment, despite my opinions of person who will not be named, like I was happy for them because they found something that like ignited that creativeness in them. It made them feel something.
Yeah.
Checkmate. Grug think the ending is Reddit.
Yo,
All right, fine. Oppenheimer instead.
When are we getting Grug on the pod?
I'm gonna be honest, Grug is a mouthpiece for me, I can't lie.
Ren, what is your opinion on The Dark Knight while we're just chucking through movies?
Grug think third act good.
Grug think it is peak Batman. Grug think the Batman is terrible.
There we go. You heard it here first.
Oh, we're pissing off everyone today.
That is the official stance for the film.
No, it isn't! No, it isn't! That is not the official stance of the Film Tits podcast. I like that movie. We need to stop saying that things are the official stance of the Film Tits podcast.
Anyway,
it's all Ridley Scott. We're coming for you.
One other movie that I thought might be good for somebody who's never seen a movie before, I thought Sister Act.
That's a pretty good one, actually. That is a pretty good one.
Yeah, because there are stakes, but it is also like there are stakes. There are things to ponder in terms of religion, and there are themes and depth. But also, you have fucking Whoopi Goldberg singing with a choir, and there's music, and it's very fun.
It's the easy answer, unfortunately, but it does kind of depend on the person. But there are, like, when you're going back, if you go back to, like, 70s and 80s movies, there's a lot of stuff there where you can see, like, why so many people suddenly became interested in Hollywood and movies.
Yeah.
Because there's so many good ones that are just, like, no wonder this is why you started watching so many movies. Like, hell, RoboCop.
Yeah.
Star Wars. Hell, for lack of a better one. I mean, it's a TV show, but Star Trek, like...
I mean, I feel like the first movie that I watched that really got me to kind of, like, appreciate and analyze films, like, as more than just, like, something to put on and more so, like, an art form that can have layers and depth and meaning, was Howl's Moving Castle. I'm not sure if I would recommend that to somebody who's never seen a movie before, just because of how abstract and weird that movie can get.
That's crazy, and that makes me look so shit, because my first one was Gremlins.
Gremlins is fucking peak.
Actually?
Yeah, go for it.
So you brought up Howl's Moving Castle. Yeah. I went through Miyazaki's filmography and watched them all last year.
Yeah.
And I think going in order is very important. So I genuinely think that Nausicaa might be a good shout for a first movie. That and Castle of Cagliostro, I think those are very good as like an introduction to animated cinema.
Castle of Cagliostro, I would agree. I'm not sure if I would agree for Nausicaa, just because of how, I guess, abstract that film can... Well, maybe not abstract, but how...
It's not abstract at all.
Maybe not... Abstract is the wrong...
The
abstract is the wrong word, but how vibesy, I guess, that film is. It might not be gripping to somebody who's never seen a film before. I don't know.
Yeah, I can see that. It depends on the person. By the way,
consider The Incredibles clears.
Yeah. The Incredibles is also a good choice.
I think I'm going to need to wrap up in a bit, by the way. Just letting you know.
Yeah, I feel like we can bring the podcast to a close here.
We're definitely going all over the place at this point, but my final summation would be, if you have a friend who isn't really into movies and you want to get them into movies, you should start them with the hit classic Heathers. That is the best point to start with, the best place to begin.
Yeah.
Go for it.
My closing statement would be that we do not want Ridley Scott dead. We swear. We don't want that man's blood on our hands. Please.
Wink. Wink.
No, don't wink. Don't wink. Okay. That is it for us at the Film Tits podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to like and maybe subscribe to the channel. And if
hit that subscribe button, smash that bell, do it.
And
all.
If you're listening on if you're listening on Spotify, feel free to follow us to be updated whenever new episodes come out, and leave a review to let us know what you think. Okay.
I've been left boob. They've been right boob.
Goodbye.
Good night, America.
Good night.